I would love to open it up to one moment. Love to open it up to what you've heard and questions you might have and insights that you would like to share from these extraordinary times. So feel free to unmute yourself, or maybe actually, let's see, if you can also put your hand up. If you click the participants button, you can put your hand up if too many people want to speak at once. But if anyone would like to just go and unmute themselves, feel free to do that. Yes. Hi, Jane.
Hi. My question is actually to Scott. I was particularly struck by the medical communities looking at longevity versus quality of health. It seems like this whole conversation directs us to that. It seems like the medical community is very slow to grasp this. Is there any thoughts you can give us as to how to help this move along a little faster? Quality of life, it's such a basic.
I think quality of life is hiding in plain sight, and I think, in a way, when we marry ourselves to our beliefs and our ideas and our constructs, we'll find more and more evidence to support our constructs. And in our world, we have this idea that the human being is born broken and is vulnerable and doesn't have resilience, and that people who are in the know are there to help people who aren't in the know. And this as a kind of a general theme, that's kind of how oftentimes our system works. And I think what can help facilitate this understanding of innate health is if we can all not only look within ourselves to see how that's already true, probably most importantly, looking within ourselves and beginning to respond from that space, and then sharing what we know, sharing what we truly know versus what we intellectually understand. It's a really big difference. And when we can share what we know, we have impact with the people in our family and the people in our community. And that's kind of where it grows. It grows from inside out. But oftentimes when we go from outside in, we try and impress with our intelligence or our intellect. And that kind of maintains this idea that there isn't something wiser within. So if we can all go there first, we can actually create, we can help innate health go viral.
That would be a very desirable outcome that we can all look towards. Thank you, Jane. Does someone else have a question or a share? They'd like to share. Sonia, are you unmuting yourself? No? Okay. Someone would like to unmute themselves?
I'm happy to share.
Hi, Ellen.
First of all, this was so beautiful. Each one of you shared so beautifully from like every facet of that could be shared about this. And it kind of took me through my own personal journey of health throughout my lifetime. Each one of you like kind of reminded me something, woke me up to something. And like I was kind of shocked at how much I used to attempt to control my symptoms and I would have like something coming on, and I'd be like, okay, I can get sick on Friday, but between now and then, let's like see what I can do. And, you know, and some of it, sometimes it was that overt, and sometimes it was just like subtle, like, okay, I'll rest a little bit, but I still like, I just like the control that I attempted just stirred everything up for so many years, you know, until this understanding. And I just like, for me, health, physical health was the exception when I first had this understanding. And then it was my own health journey and seeing 3 autoimmune conditions just kind of fade into the background or symptoms disappear, that when I wasn't trying, imagine that, when I wasn't trying to do anything with them, but listen to the momentary inspiration that really drove it. But this one was so different. So I woke up about 7 or 8 weeks ago, and I was like really in this like daily thing of getting an hour of moderate cardio work. I was hiking, the weather was beautiful. It's like, got to do it before the summer gets here because it's so hot in Phoenix. And I was doing really well, and I was really in the flow of, some days it was more effort, I don't say effort, some days my body was more effortlessly doing more, and some days, you know, and I was just like, oh, that's what it is today. Oh, that's what it is today. And then on a Saturday, I woke up and I heard, not today, but I didn't listen because I was on this roll. And I looked out and I saw the air pollution. And I said, oh, I don't have asthma. I don't have a history of, you know, I have a couple of pneumonias in my past, but like, I don't have any lung respiratory things. But I heard it again, don't go. And then I looked at like the air quality and where I was, and it was just like, really? You're like, this is the last day we're going to hike when it's this high. And about, I don't know, that afternoon, bam, I got slammed with, you know, what all the corona symptoms, although no, I didn't get tested till I was, you know, well through them, because it didn't matter to me. But Scott, when you were talking about like the health of the planet, and I had heard, I don't know, Scott, do you listen to Zach Bush?
Yeah, I know Zach Bush. Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, through my journey with this illness, like I was listening to Zach, and when he was talking about pollution and how there was an increase in high polluted cities, I was like, oh my gosh, that's exactly what happened, and how brilliant my body was to kind of gently say no. And I, you know, and I overrode it, as we often do. But then I just want to share, like, my journey with it was different than any other short-term illness I ever had. And I was sick for 5 weeks. And it was just, I'm just so grateful. And I would just say, like, I experienced like a little bit of what everyone shared, from like knowing my essence before form, as we started this beautiful time together. And seeing how wisdom was just there all the time. And how I could see where the edge was between shortness of breath and added anxiety. Like I felt like I experienced that place, and it was so beautiful. Like Liliana, when you were sharing, it was like it brought me back to those moments. So thank you for the opportunity to kind of share, to share with all of you, like the journey that I've had with my own health, and how beautiful it is to have a really peaceful experience. And I think I'll just finish by saying, up until coronavirus, like I saw that there were certain things I was really comfortable not knowing about. I had learned to be more comfortable, or I had, you know, I just was more comfortable. But as soon as Corona came, I was so comfortable. Like there was nothing known. There was nothing known about my move, when I was going to hug my family members again, if I was going to see, like there was just nothing known. And riding in that unknown through my own mild version of the illness and everything that's been happening around that has just been so beautiful. So thank you for reflecting it all and giving me a chance to share that with you. Hope that wasn't too long.
Thank you, Ellen. And I'll just say that Ellen has a beautiful, I didn't get back to you about this, but you have a beautiful podcast with your son who interviews you. And if you want to put the link in the message so people might want to go there, about your journey, it's sort of very inspired through your understanding of the principles through.
I wrote a letter called Dear Virus.
Dear Virus, right.
Letter came through me, and my own son was so inspired. But I will find the link and send it to you.
That would
Thank
be
you
great.
So much. Thank you, Liliana and Scott and Sarah and Anne.
Yes, no, I don't know where she is. Yeah, thank you. And your story just reminds me of your wisdom coming through there and saying, don't go, and you must go. There was this article doing the rounds of promoting fear, and it was the top virologist says COVID almost took him out or something like that, and it was a virologist who'd worked on Ebola, etc. And he gives his account of being sick, and he says, I had a temperature, I had a fever, but I'm a workaholic, so I just worked through it because I thought, well, because he's a workaholic, that's it. And then he talks about how then just the symptoms became worse and worse, and he didn't want to be in hospital. And then there was the statistic of, he realized he had a better chance. You had a better chance of having Ebola and surviving in West Africa than you had, COVID if you went into a hospital in the UK. Some like bizarre statistic, and like people were spreading this article to drum up fear. And I read and I was like, he didn't listen to his body. The body told him, gave him a fever, and he was like, oh, I'm a workaholic, I'll work through it. However he did that. And just this awareness of this great communication network that just exists within us all the time, whether it's sending us insight or a little symptom or a little feeling, just pointing us step by step, is extraordinary.
Yeah, and I just want to add, like, and then when I didn't listen and got sick, it was like, well, that's what happens. Like the grace that I experienced with that was extraordinary, because in the past, the negative self-talk and this like what I call self-abuse would have been very high. Like, how many warnings did you need? How much, like you knew that there was a chance that you'd been exposed, like, but none of that. It was just like, oh, here we go.
Beautiful. Thank you, Ellen. Who else would like to share or ask a question?
Tanya, I'd like to share something following on from what yourself and Ellen said, and it's about how, when we have this understanding, we're able to have those conversations. We're able to have those difficult conversations, because I strongly suspect everyone in my family had the virus in March, just before we went into lockdown. And so out of respect to others, we did self-quarantine for 14 days. And none of us had it that badly, but my son has a long history of, I don't want to say asthma, but asthma type symptoms. And he's 13. And he kind of, when all of the scare and the fear stuff was coming out, and there were times where we got sucked into it and we came back out, and you get sucked into it again and you come back out. And he said, we were able to joke about it. He said, I'm going to die on time. He was like, if I get it, I'm going to be the one in our family that dies. And we were kind of half joking about it and half not, because all of the messages were saying, and back then it was made out to be so deadly, you almost thought you were going to see people drop dead in the street. Like, it was made out to be like the death rate was going to be so high, between 3 and 5%, and it's ended up by being what, 0.01 or something. But it was so interesting that we were able to have that conversation and joke about it. It almost took the fear out of it. This understanding enables you to have those difficult conversations, and to able to speak and almost make fun and of the stuff, some of the crazy thoughts that we do have. And you know, he and I could actually go there, but then in my head, you know, like Liliana's experience, and possibly like Scott's, that in our careers we have been lucky enough to come across so many complementary therapies and so many easy ways of what I called old-fashioned nursing techniques at home, that I just thought, well, we'll just deal with whatever shows up in the moment. And we were able to have, it's just the ability to have that conversation. And what was really interesting is he did get the virus, I think my homeopath said, but he had the most mild version of it out of all of us. But at one point he did start having breathing problems. And I went into, oh, here we go. Oh, here we go. But then I realized his tendency with his asthmatic type symptoms is when he's pushing against something, a reality that he doesn't like, that he has this, like all of us, he makes up this reality. And for him, it ended up by being his irritation of not being able to see his friends and go to school. And he holds it here. He just tightens up and holds it there. And it's so interesting. It's kind of like other elements of health, that just because something looks like it looks like viruses can be passed on, like, oh, but we were all together and now we all have it. Or just because something looks like it works that way, it's not always what it looks like on the surface level. The same way that in my and again, I'm always prepared to look at stuff again, and see something new. But in the fields that I work in, it's very common knowledge now that cholesterol doesn't cause heart disease. It might be present when heart disease is there, but it doesn't cause it. So in the same sense that I could have, as soon as he started having breathing problems, I could have stayed in that reality of, oh no, this is it, this is the start of it, it's just all going to go downhill from here. But actually being able to take a step back from it and see that something else might possibly be going on, was really helpful. It was just really helpful. So I just kind of wanted to share that on the back of what Ellen shared and what you shared, Tanya.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else?
Maybe I'll say something. I'm just thinking about my dad. He's 90, okay, and he was surrounded by people with the symptoms. He's in Italy, and he has a carer who had the symptoms, and then my sister's family had the symptoms. So early on, when there was no lockdown, he was exposed. So it's curious, and I don't know, I can't tell you exactly what happened and why, but he has Alzheimer's. So sometimes I call him and he thinks I'm his teacher, or sometimes he thinks he's 6 years old and he's, you know, his auntie, or he's off to school anyway, but he's not preoccupied with his health ever. And my dad spent his life with a chronic cough and a lot of irritation in his chest, in his airways. He had an allergic kind of tendency to many things. And and an allergy to cheese, okay? So he has this thing throughout his life. So if I was eating cheese, he had to be away from him, because if he even, sometimes we have Parmesan cheese, don't we? So I was a cheeky child, naughty child, so I made crumbs with the Parmesan cheese and I put it around his plate, because he used to like eating all the breadcrumbs. So he would eat the Parmesan cheese and he would be spitting it all out and maybe vomiting, I don't know. But when he had, so this is a curiosity, yeah? I'm not drawing conclusions. When his Alzheimer's kicked in, and he stopped being preoccupied with this cheese allergy, and in this case, he wasn't preoccupied with the virus or who was around him or his cough, and his cough stopped when he had the Alzheimer's symptoms kicked in, okay? So he's so healthy. My dad is like, I call him and he's got this beautiful glow, healthy glow, never got the symptoms. He is 80, 90 with a long history of upper respiratory symptoms. Didn't get it. So that made me very curious. I play with things like that because they just thought really have a role in the development of symptoms, even when a virus is concerned. And there's different levels of consciousness where thought is concerned. You see, even if we're not aware of a thought, it might still be there. Maybe in his Alzheimer's phase of his life, he's gone somewhere else with his awareness about symptoms. And I remember once I cooked something and there was cheese in it and he ate it, but the Alzheimer's had already been kind of manifesting. He didn't get sick. And that kind of blew me out. You know, I was already doing all my holistic stuff and made me reflect, made me curious. And as I'm on my dad, I've got to share this because, you know, he doesn't always know who I am. Sometimes he does. But during this COVID, and I call him, because I'm in London, he's in Italy, but I call him like maybe every fortnight, once a month, because before COVID, I thought that was enough for someone who doesn't recognize him. But during COVID, I thought, no, I'm going to call him every day. And then when I call him, oh my God, I can't tell you the level of connection I have with this man, even if he doesn't know who I am. We have found each other during COVID. Beyond this physical form, beyond what we thought we were to each other, beyond all the ideas, there is love. And I've always had it for my dad, but for some reason I thought that I couldn't communicate at that level. So I call him and we chat, and sometimes he knows me and most times he doesn't. And then I found ways to he was a religious man and he prayed a lot. So I'm not particularly religious at all, but I remember my prayers. So I say them with him and he knows them all. So I connect like that. And then always I say, Papa, look in my eyes. Papa, look at me. He doesn't sometimes. And then I say, Papa, I love you very much. Ti amo, Papa. Ti amo, Papa. Papa, ti amo. And you can tell he's just gradually finds my eyes. And every time he says, I know. And often he cries, but it's not, I don't see pain. I see the recognition of something intact and pure that can't be damaged, can't be touched, can't be, no virus, no illness, no, and to me, it's been one of the many gifts. Beautiful invitation, as Scott says, to look beyond what we think is possible. So I wanted to share about my dad because there is so much there, just this one thing that has come to me, this one gift that I received during, I don't know if I'm ever going to hug him in this physical form, but I can't tell you how much this has meant to me to be able to connect at that level again. And that's a gift COVID, this thing, has given me. So there's always something, if we're quiet enough, if we're open enough, if we can kind of be curious about seeing more beyond what we think we know. So I hope, you know.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I see a hand up, Sonia. Hello. Let me unmute you.
Hi everyone. Thank you. It's been really lovely to hear you all and to hear all of your stories. I've lost you a couple of times. I've had a technological nightmare, but I caught most of it. I think you've all answered, and I don't want anybody to think that I haven't listened and I don't understand, because I do. But I think in my mind, the challenge that I have sometimes is going beyond what medicine says and what the medical profession, mixed with what your family members or maybe your husband, or if they don't share the 3 principles. So if people around you don't have that understanding or that enlightenment or that knowledge, yes, you can have it within, and you can I can trust myself to a certain extent, but I still have my moments of fear, and I'm still learning this. Like I know even, Liliana and all of you say you're still learning. But how do you balance that then? How do you balance between your own insights and your own judgment, but then the people around you and the medical profession, for example? And I know that's a big question. And I don't know who to throw that out to, maybe to Liliana, because I don't get to speak to her usually. Might be nice.
Okay, go for it, Liliana.
Yeah, I'll give it a go. So obviously I have made choices in my life like 20 years ago, maybe even before that, to embark on something that wasn't gonna recognize. It had a lot of skepticism around it. There was never gonna be a red carpet for me because, people would want to argue and there's skepticism, first of all, about homeopathy. Then I move away from homeopathy a bit or whatever, and then I go into 3 principles, which again is like, it's not easy to bring such simplicity and to strip things to such a pure, simple, truth. And then for people to come along, be on board with that. So I 100% hear what you're saying, and I've had different phases and different ways of experiencing that, yeah. And so I can't tell you what to do, of course not. It's your own journey, and you'll see different things at different times on how to deal with that. But I would say keep receiving it for yourself. Keep seeing it for yourself. That's That's all you can really do. You can't see it for someone else, ever. That's never going to happen. You can only see it for yourself. And the more you see it, the more you have a sense of what to do with it if you want to do something with it in the world. You know, and like the ripple is like, I don't know anything that has such a ripple. I've never come across anything in my small journey that has just a deep, powerful, systemic ripple on everyone around us and the world, even if you touch one person. Because we're talking about consciousness and expansion of consciousness. So if you can keep seeing it for yourself, then you know how to deal with that. And you won't even need to say much most of the times. That's my experience. I'm not saying, you know, different people will. But the joy and the sense of gratitude and freedom that I get when I see it for myself, just a little bit more, a fraction more, or that I see when I see in the people I work with in prison that have been written off. It's not supposed to happen on paper, and I see it. So every time is a gift to myself first. And that's the best thing I can do for the next person and the next person and globally. That's why when we're up against global stuff now and people feel overwhelmed, and I bring it back to basic. Every time I feel lost, every time I feel hurt, I bring it back to basic. Every time I feel scared. And it works. Because when I bring it back to basic, everything makes sense in a different way. Sorry, I hope that.
Thanks.
Thank you, Sonia. I would just love to add to that hold on, I'm just going to mute you. That we can get caught up sometimes in a story about why someone else needs to understand what we're seeing. And then that becomes sort of a fearful story, so that there can't be any truth in that, right? And if we just show up from love, that alone is transformative. And this power that exists within us to radiate in ways that, you know, isn't completely understood, but sort of quantum physics sort of touches on it. But, you know, that this, like I said at the beginning, you know, we have this idea that we share disease or we transmit disease. But what if the most powerful force in us is to transmit love, and then all we need to do is not even to do, right? We just need to fall back to that default of love, and from that place we will be transmitting healing love, and that alone can change the world. So I don't know if someone else from the panel wants to add something on that.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of when I had my healing from chronic fatigue, and everything that I learned in naturopathic nutrition and detoxing the body, and it was so life-changing for my health. I went into oh, this is brilliant, everyone should know about this. Yeah, you know, like a desperate puppy, like jumping on people, like, oh, you need to know about this, you need to know about this, you need to know about this. yeah, that didn't go so well. Like, that didn't go so well. And it's not for lack of what we've seen, but it has to come from within for other people. It's kind of like, I use the example of when people give up smoking. Like, everybody knows that smoking's really bad for you, and your chance of ending up with a lung problem later in life is quite high. Like, everybody knows that, and yet people still find it really hard to give up smoking. So it's not about the intellect, it's not about our cognitive intelligence. Every person that's ever managed to give up smoking have had their own personal insight that has made sense to them to want to give up. Like, and we can use words to describe what that is, couldn't we? Someone would say, oh, I don't know. Oh, I just saw, I felt, I don't know. I felt rotten, you know, after a heavy night of smoking the next day. Or, like, we can use words to try and describe what it is, but the insight goes so much deeper than that. And that's the part that creates the shift, that then creates the change in behavior. So the same with the principles. The minute we're into that whole, from a really lovely place, because it can be a loving place of, oh, everybody needs to get this. It doesn't necessarily need to come from a fearful place, or an irritated place of, oh, you just need to get this, especially if you're coming from kind of alternative therapies versus allopathic medicine. That your, like Tanya said, your sense of being, your come from is the most powerful thing that you can offer. Like, the minute we go into, oh, this principles is this great thing, and we kind of, I remember someone describing it to me as like, it's like holding someone down and just let me 3P you. Kind of, it doesn't work like that. And the minute we think it does, the minute we're in the thinking that someone else needs to get something, we've gone outside in. Like, and they've got even less chance of hearing or seeing something new. So it's always about our experience. Like, everything we've talked about on this wonderful webinar that Tanya has set up, is it always comes back to the self every single time. Whether we're talking about mental or physical health, it starts here every single time. So I hope that's helpful. I just wanted to add that.
I think all of the things, thank you, all of the things that you've all said make me really hopeful, because I'm usually really enthused about new things that I learn about. And I've been in this conversation for at least 2 years probably, but I talk about it so little to people outside. But maybe subtly I do radiate the message in just different things that maybe shifts in my thinking or the way I listen. But I was a bit worried, thinking, why am I not talking about this enough? Why am I not spreading it enough? Why am I not? But I don't. But listening to you guys collectively, that it makes perfect sense that I'm just must be doing that in really subtle ways. Maybe by just listening, maybe by what Tanya says, turning up in love on occasion, not always with my kids, but trying to at least. But yeah, that's reassuring that maybe, you know, in me not talking about it so much, because it's something that I know has to come from within, and I'm still processing it myself and learning so much in different ways. So no, thank you. I hope that makes sense, because it makes real sense to me.
Thank you, Sonia. Would anyone like to add? I'm so happy that Anne has come back and followed her wisdom at the beginning of this call and said, I should hand over the call to you being host, which is just as well since she disappeared with the lack of internet. Lovely to have you back. And would you like to share anything? I don't know how long when exactly you joined the conversation.
I don't know how long I'm going to be back either. I mean, I'm on my mobile now, which it's finally got through. My main internet is still not back on. I don't know what's happened to it. It's completely gone. But I did get a recording of the first half, and I haven't heard any of the questions so far because I've only just got back. So I'm here to listen to what people have got to say now.
Okay, great.
Are there more questions?
Anyone else like to ask or share? Yes, Missy, do you want to? I can unmute you. Hi.
Hey there, sorry about my camera's not working right now, so you're getting my picture instead of me. And I have missed actually a lot of this last probably 20 minutes because my daughter needed me. So I just wanted to come on and say, oh my gosh, first of all, this has just been heavenly to listen to. That first section where you all were speaking was just so beautiful to just hear all of you. And for anyone, again, I haven't listened to the question and answer part because I was helping my daughter, but I don't know how many have asked or talked about symptoms, but I got into this conversation because of really, really difficult physical symptoms, which then sort of led to a pretty deep depression. And it started when I was about 40, almost 48, because I'm just getting ready to turn 50 now. And I will say it was such a radical shift. And so I would say it's been at least 6 months, if not longer, that I have had any physical symptoms. I would say that I'm the healthiest I have been in 50 years. And I was really my symptoms were horrible, horrible, and just really out of control and scary. And I worked so hard to make them go away. And then when I got into this conversation, and I'm not saying this as a prescription at all, everyone has their own guidance, but I literally threw away every single supplement. The best way to describe it is I just sort of gave up. Not in a bad way gave up, but in a trusting my body way gave up. And I threw away, I was on so many supplements and I was following all these protocols, and I was doing square breathing 3 times a day, and I did tapping twice a day, all these things. And looking back, I can see that all the things I was doing was ramping up my symptoms because it was, I was in a state of vigilance. I was being so vigilant. I would set my timers on my phone to remind me to tap and remind me to take a supplement. And I was so vigilant. And when those went away and the vigilance went away, like I said, I think I'm the healthiest I've been in 50 years. And it's been at least a good 6 months that I've had any symptoms. And I just, I go out for these 8 and 9 mile hikes with my kids now. And I really credit this conversation, this understanding. So if anyone is still struggling or anything, I just encourage you to stay in the conversation, as they say, and keep listening. And I find that the less you do, the more that intelligence just shines through on its own. So I'm very grateful for this conversation. I'm grateful for today. So I really still stay in the conversation as much as I can. I love these webinars and I love listening. Like I said, even though I don't have the symptoms anymore and I feel like I'm the healthiest I've ever been, there just seems to be something that still keeps me listening. Like you've discovered a really great music and you just want to always have that music playing in the background. That's kind of how I feel about this conversation now. It's just really nice background music. So thank you guys.
Thank you. Thank you, Missy. Anne, you've got a big smile on your face. I'm wondering if you want to share what's going on inside you while we have you here.
I just think it's just been lovely. I mean, I got cut off 2 or 3 times in the first half, but the whole of the time Liliana was off, I was off as well. but it was just lovely. Everything that everyone has said, I've just just been in a lovely feeling. It's just, and you've said exactly all the things that I would have wanted to say if I could say them, but it's been so clear and made so much sense to me. I hope it's been making sense to other people as well. Getting it just makes it so much clearer what's really going on and what's where we could be looking, and definitely, like you said, and like we were discussing earlier, my thing is always to be noticing the love, and the more we're in love, and I don't mean in love, I mean in our natural love, the more healing it is in every way, as people seem to have experienced for themselves. So thank you very much. Thank you for everyone that's been on the panel, because it's been great, really. Yeah.
Scott, so, you've also got a smile on your face. No, I know lots of people have got smiles on their face. Well, there's like
that's good. That's Scott, good.
You want to add something as well? Or... Scott?
I don't know if I could add to anything. I think, I mean, I really don't, there's nothing to add. In a game of subtraction, I have nothing to add.
Okay. I was just feeling maybe there was something you want to say. Is there any, we've got just under 15 minutes, so if anyone's been shy until now, and do you want to get that courage to say something, to share, that would be lovely. Anyone? Yes, hi Annette. Hi, I'll unmute you. Go ahead. Hello.
Hello. Hi.
Hi.
I guess I have been shy, probably, to be honest.
Okay.
The one thing that's really stuck, and I'm not sure who said it, was about not trying to share it with someone else, or trying to kind of convince them to kind of get it. Because I've realised that, because my daughter is going through a lot at the moment, mentally, physically, and has been for a couple of years really, and it's been really challenging. Her behaviour is really, really challenging. And I always kept on thinking, if only she'd read one of the books, or if only she'd listen to one of the videos, because she's a teenager, she's 14. If only she'd kind of get into this, then it would fix her. And I've just, something that someone said earlier has really resonated with me, and that doesn't feel like the right route for me to take now, for me to not try and do that. It's just me still believing and not believing this, me still living this is the best I can do for her, as opposed to me trying to convince her that this is going to give her the answers, because I don't know what's going to give her the answers. And what comes to me at the minute is that she's very unhappy, and I kind of think, oh, if only she'd listen to this, or if only she'd do this, then she'd feel better. But I think what I've realised is I don't need to do that. That I can just, the best thing I can do is just know that she's got innate well-being, and that somehow she'll find it herself. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to say something, Annette, and I hope you find this helpful. I went through something very similar with my daughter, and I had a lot of thinking about it, and I thought, well, I teach this. Like, how can this possibly happen? And like you, we know how powerful this understanding is. But I guess the point is that we have we have words for this, don't we? we talk about mind, consciousness and thought, and we talk about the three principles and outside in and inside out, but there we're just using words for something that's in existence all the time. And the misunderstanding can be that they don't somehow have it already, but they're just not seeing it. And it was a real invitation for me to look at myself again. And what's been so revelatory for me has been that this year, at a time where a lot of people were struggling, she's thriving. She's thriving because it feels like a lot of truths are coming to the surface about what's going on in the world, and that for her it's like she's realigning with the truth of reality right now. So I think, of course, as a parent we can find it really hard, but I think, and again, this is made up, this isn't principles, but I do think for many there is a transition in teens that they go through of making sense of the world and making sense of themselves, and it's not always plain sailing, and it's kind of like giving birth, that it's not always pleasant, it can be painful, but it's part of the process and it's meant to be like that. And it's kind of like right now, as the world is changing so much, and a lot of it is painful, and whatever we're saying here today, there's sympathy, because there's a lot of, and tragedy, because a lot of people have died. And I think there will be a lot more in the next 4 years are going to be a really rocky ride. But the planet kind of has to go through this process to come out the other side. So I kind of just want to reassure you, Annette, that your experience is not unusual. We've been through it too. Kind of like we've been through it too. And for my daughter, I see it now that it kind of had to happen. It really had to happen. And again, it was and I think it might have been something you picked up that I said to Sonia, that it even when it really looks like, never more so with our children, that we want to fix them and we want to make life easy for them, that it's always an invitation for us to look at ourselves, always. So I don't know if that's helpful or not.
Yes, it is, because I realised I can't fix her. I mean, my daughter's got a social worker, a mental health team, a psychiatrist. You know, she's got a whole team of people around her, and they can't fix her at the moment. You know, they've not been, you know, so I'm just realising that I have no control over this. You know, whatever journey she's on is the journey she's going to go through. The more I can keep coming back to not getting lost, because I have got lost a little bit down a rabbit hole of fear. And when I'm back, you know, that's the best I can do for her, I think, when I'm still confident in my own health and well, you know, in where it comes from for me. So I think that's when she's going to see it reflecting for me, isn't it, I guess.
Yeah, and it is the when we see that they don't need fixing, that they're more likely to see it too, that she's already perfect, she can't be improved upon. She can have the misunderstanding that there's more going on, and traditional forms of psychology will be giving her more and more to think about. Like there's a direction to go, isn't there, where that's more unhelpful. And it's interesting, speaking to my cleaner last year, and she was saying that her daughter was struggling, and she was on the waiting list for ages to get help, and by the time the help came round, she refused to want to go and said it just didn't make sense, and And her mum was fighting against it, going, oh, but we've waited so long. And I said, well, maybe that's her wisdom telling her that actually that's not going to help. So it's
she tells them all regularly nothing that they're doing helps her.
Yeah, brilliant.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Anna. Anyone else, 5 minutes, or anyone like to close with something? Hi, Ben. Hi.
I would just love to say that we're looking at so many changes within the healthcare system now. And I've never felt more optimistic than I do at this moment about what that change is bringing to all of us. Thank you so much for today.
Thank you for joining us, and thank you for sharing your optimism, which is lovely. Yes. Anyone else? A last word?
Well, this has been so beautiful. I'm really, really grateful to all of you. And Tanya, this space has been so special. So I just want to say thank you to you all, and to have met you. Those of you I don't know, most of you I don't know. So how special. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd just like to say thank you all. Thank you all for showing up. Thank you all for creating and allowing an amazing space for conversation. And, and Tanya and Anne, thank you so much for the idea and following your own insight on this. It's been wonderful. So thank you all. Thank you.
Sorry, Anne, I didn't thank you. Thank you, Anne.
She is my partner. She is my partner.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
It's fine. It's fine, because that was on my list to do, was to be in touch with you, and Anne was doing all the back end stuff. So that was our division. But yes, I would just like to thank everyone, and like I said, it was just an inspired moment of let's just do this, and me reaching out to Anne and saying let's do it. And we'd been back and forth, shall we, and she'd been traveling around or doing her gardening and things, and I'm so grateful for everyone who joined us on the panel, and for everyone who joined us here, and for everyone who's listening to the recording, and to shine a little bit of light of hope in this world of fear that just seems to be popping up, and new stories every day, and we don't have to accept that, especially when it doesn't feel good. And we know in this understanding what that is when we sit in fear, and what that reflects, and nothing about the truth out there, but only about our state of mind. And we've all seen the transformation this understanding can have, and that it has no limits, even in a pandemic, even when people are talking about a virus and running away from a virus and masking out from a virus. The brilliance of our body to always want to act out of love, to always want to keep us pointing back into balance, no matter, it's just the most non-judgmental, loving system there is. And considering the amount of things we can put in our body, and the exposure we give it to interesting things, and the toxic thoughts, the perceived traumas, and everything that we can just fill our terrain with, and yet it's 100% forgiving, and always acting from love, and always bringing us back to this space of our default of of peace and love and understanding, and just remembering that is transformative, I think, in itself, no matter where we are. So thank you all. Thank you.
I wanted to say thank you to you, Tanya and Anne, as well, and this having put me in touch with Liliana and Scott has been beautiful. And I just want to say one more thing, that what you've done here has been incredible, and I know this has drawn in people from the Three Principles community, and it would be wonderful to do this in a way that drew in more outside of that community and talk about it in a way that would spread this understanding even further. It would be hugely impactful. So I'm just going to put that out there that this shouldn't be contained just within this community, because this is so powerful. It needs to go further. But thank you, Tanya, for...
Off you go, Sarah. It's all yours.
I can tell you, Anne and I had an idea of, I mean, the furthest that idea, you know, has gotten with us is that we thought, well, we could set up a Facebook group after this that's really to share, you know, the experiences of health, even in a pandemic, from this understanding that can be so healing and so refreshing. And so we can see where we go with that. We kind of just got stuck with the name. That's why, because we didn't know if we should, you know, have virus in the title or pandemic in the title, or, you know, and not restrict it, and even maybe not Three Principles in the title with what you're saying, Sarah, because you know, people often say, well, Three Principles, what's that? And so we'll rest on it, on that. And if you have any ideas, welcome to share. And really just to create a space to explore health from a very different viewpoint than the dominant narrative. Let's say. So really putting strength and power back into our hands and our bodies. So yeah, I see someone has a hand up. Yes, Monica. Yes. Hello.
Is that it?
Yes, yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Well, I'm really came in late, but I'm really enjoying. I appreciate this. But what I've noticed recently, what is the definition of pandemic? Because that's being used more than the COVID, and that might be important. It might be more directed to what's being spoken of, but I don't even know the definition of what it means. But lately I hear that's the word being used in the community. I don't know. That's what I've noticed. I don't know if it's just online the word is, or if I go out in the public. I guess it's like new learning, perhaps. And what I hear that what is happening is forced new learning for everyone. So I guess what you're doing would help to put it in, support putting it in a good direction. Because I've heard stories where people will go back to their same habits and there won't be, but I don't know if that will happen. But, you know, just sort of hearsay of, do you know the definition of pandemic? Yeah, so it might be a good word to use. So because what you're speaking about is adjusting to change in a good way. Kind of. Yeah. And I heard something that Sid spoke. I looked at one of his books the other day, and it said, this is mayhem. Might not be the word he said, but it's also perfect. But he also said, I think what he's saying it's like this 365-degree turn. Like, don't get too upset about changes not happening, which I used to do all the time. So even the conversations here today about, you know, let people have their journey and sort of be in the moment and not get, but I'm also coming up with the word of being heard, you know, lots of little sort of messages for my own learning. So being patient, but still making some moves. which I think what you've done today. It's been a move, you know, which I think it's really good to have communities where this whole idea of you know, I'm in there and I'm kind of alone because I don't see as many people to chat with. So I'm online a lot. So it's quite supportive even in guiding me, because I had a really weak day yesterday. It was most peculiar. But I also had a visit with my granddaughter. So it was I didn't want to lose that even though I was tired. So I usually have one good day and one bad day. And I kind of take that as maybe the bad day I'm learning something. I don't really know, but I kind of just stay in the, as you say, stay in the conversation. So yeah. I'm glad I got on. Thanks.
Yeah. Well, we're all learning through this pandemic, and that's the most amazing opportunity that we have to expand our awareness and our consciousness, I think. So I'm aware of the time that we've just gone a little bit over, and again, thank you, Anne, Scott, Liana, and Sarah, and thank you to everyone who joined us. And we will be in touch. We will send out the recording link to everyone, and we'll see if we can find a name for a Facebook group that can preserve this this beginning of this conversation in a new direction. So thank you. Okay. Yes.
Bye. Thank you. Bye.
Yeah.
Bye.